and please just keep your eye out for that in our newsletter. And we'll also monitor and let people in as they join us. So thanks very much for everybody joining us. And I'll turn this over to our Vice President, Trish Porco.
Thanks, Rory, and good morning, everybody. Again, as Rory said, I'm Trish Porco, and I'm currently serving as the Vice President of the Sault Ste. Marie Chamber of Commerce. And on behalf of the Chamber, I'd like to welcome everyone to today's Fireside Chat with Terry Sheehan. To begin, I would like to acknowledge and recognize that we are holding this meeting on the traditional territorial and ancestral lands of the Ojibwe people from Garden River, Batchewana First Nations, the Anishinaabeg people. This sacred and spiritual place has been known since time immemorial as Bowatting. We wish to honor the people on this part of Turtle Island as we recognize their homelands in the spirit of partnership and reconciliation. The Chamber of Commerce believes that there is great value in holding open discussions with our elected officials. This format allows us to cover a number of issues of public interest and interest specific to the business community in an informal manner. As a chamber, we also feel that it's important that we provide our members with the opportunity to remain engaged with our elected representatives. There's a couple special guests I'd like to recognize here this morning. We have Kevin Wire, who's a newly appointed member of the Ontario Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors. So congratulations to Kevin. And we also have some Chamber of Commerce board members and past presidents. We have Jason Nacarado, currently serving, Derek Jackson, who is our Strive Chair, and we have past President Don Mitchell joining us this morning. And of course, we always have our Chamber staff who are always so on top of things. We have Bob Burns, Don Ferguson, and of course, Rory. Today's Fireside Chat will be led by Chamber President Michael Stone of TD Wealth Private Investment Advisor. And please take it away, Mike.
All right, I made sure to hit the mute button so no one had to say, you're on mute. I've already heard it too many times and it's only 8:30 in the morning. Welcome everybody, good to see everybody. It's nice to see a good crowd, especially on the Friday of a long weekend. Hope everyone had an enjoyable evening last night. I know I sure did. I had to wake up extra early this morning, put my jersey back on along with my two boys and rewatch the third period because they had to go to bed and didn't get to see it last night. So for all those living in Leaf Nation, sorry, but go Habs. I just had to get that in there. Anyway, yeah, everyone, welcome today. I think we've got a lot of interesting topics to speak about. There's going to be, I know there's a lot of important things on everyone's mind, so I think we'll dive right into it. But maybe we'll start off with the most important question. Terry, how are you? How are you doing? How's the family? What's new? How are things?
Well, first of all, Michael, thank you very much, Trish. And you know, this Fireside Chat is just absolutely fabulous. And you know, Fireside Chat with Terry, you know, I think there could be a subtitle, Roaring Back with Rory and the Chamber. And I think that, you know, I'm feeling great. I got my shot yesterday. I'm 51 years old. And so I went down there. They were just fabulous. Victoria was the one that gave me the shot. I feel great. So I can't get out of yard work, you know, so I'm going to be doing that this weekend and whatnot. And so, yeah, it was just, you know, I went online and put my information in when I was eligible through the Algoma Public Health System and chose my time, which was yesterday. Went in, the volunteers were excellent. One of the Terrys here squirted my hand as I went in for a volunteer. So thank you very much, sir. And, you know, and it was just so professionally done. So just top notch. So congratulations. And on that note, I wanted to, you know, thank the Chamber for what you guys are doing. And I plan on going back and taking some coffee and donuts with, you know, your great program, you know, to show how much we appreciate, you know, what they're all doing, you know, and that are, you know, are the doctors, the nurses, the volunteers, the security, you know, the people taking your information. It was all professional. And down there was a mix of people. I saw a lot of essential workers coming in with their uniforms on, you know, like walking in and getting their shot. So congratulations to all the businesses that are allowing their workers to get out and take the time that they need to get down there. It's quick, it's fast, and they're getting the shot and going back to work, and it's good. So I'm doing great. I've said since the beginning that these fireside chats, and we've had many consultations with the Chamber of Commerce and other groups in the private sector, in particular before budget 2021. We did a lot of consultations, and a lot of our programming that you see in 2021, the budget about finishing the fight on COVID-19, is a result of consultations, privately between us as individual members, but also as groups like this. And it was the feedback, like you remember, Michael and Trish, when we first started out, and it was such a change a year ago where we are today. Like, it's so different. There were no vaccines talked about back then, like nothing. There was nothing in the world about vaccines. But it just shows when all the scientists and all the healthcare people and we all just focus on that. And so we've been able to get those vaccines out and out the door. And I've mentioned on a chamber conversation before about how we diversified, made sure we had a diversified portfolio, not putting all our eggs in one basket. So we're seeing a great deal of vaccines, and I'll delve into that in that conversation. But overall, I'm doing great, and I wanted to thank everyone personally for taking working as Team Canada. And I think a lot of that kind of in Sault Ste. Marie, we had a lot of practice on that with the steel tariffs. I see a lot of the steel people are here. The 232 tariffs, where the private sector, the Chamber of Commerce, you guys testified at Ottawa. We created those opportunities. The unions, everyone, the federal government, provincial government, municipal government, all working together. And I want to thank you for that, and the First Nations. And Trish, thank you for that land acknowledgement. It's so important for us to recognize that we share these lands, with the Batchewana and Garden River and the Métis people. So I just want to thank you for that. It was really, really, really critical. So it's doing good, and I'm just looking forward to continuing to roll up our sleeves and to get the job done of finishing the fight with COVID-19.
Excellent. Good to hear. And congratulations on getting that first shot. I know that's a milestone. So let's follow up on that. So can you give us an update on vaccine distribution and the current plans to ensure supply for the second inoculation? And I guess probably what's most important on people's timelines or on minds is the timeline to get that second shot by September. So we'd love to hear about that.
Great. Well, great question. Great question. Hot off the press, and you heard it first here at the Chamber. I just came across my desk this morning. As of today, Canada has delivered 23 million doses to the provinces and territories. 19.8 million have been administered to Canadians. Specifically in Ontario, it's getting close to 9 million doses, 8,885,735 to be exact. So that's absolutely critical that we've done that. And again, it goes to my comments earlier about having a diversified portfolio. We have the most diversified portfolio of vaccines in the world, and it has been critical. We've been nimble, and I wanted to give a shout out to the Minister of Procurement who has done a great job, and Nina Anand, in doing that. So we have had lots and lots coming. So for instance, we worked with Pfizer to advance 1.4 million doses from next week to this week. So it contributed to a record 4.5 million vaccines being received this week in Canada. And we are seeing we're on track to answer that question. We're on track to receive well over 40 million doses by the end of June, and over 100 million by September. Because we've said from the beginning, from the get-go, and you've got to remember, and I go back to my original comments, it wasn't just not even a year ago where vaccines weren't approved yet in most countries. So we certainly have, and that's 2020. So December 2020, we received a few 100,000. But in 2021, it's been a remarkable effort by all people involved in getting these vaccines, procured and into the provinces and territories. And as you know, the provinces and territories have the responsibility to distribute them to the local health units. The local health units then create the plan to distribute them. And I got to give a shout out again to all the workers in the hospitals, the pharmacies too, because they are playing a very, very important role. Healthcare workers, like I mentioned, that are caring for sick Canadians and helping to roll out these vaccines. So we're also going to be receiving at least 2 million of the Pfizer doses per week until the end of July. So as we've said all the time, every Canadian that wants a vaccine will have enough doses to have fully vaccinated Canadians by the end of September, right? So that's great news. And so it's going to ramp up significantly. So it's going to be all hands on deck. I've heard through the grapevine that some pharmacies here locally will be receiving doses this week and next week. So their allotment in shares from the province. So, there's going to be a lot of that happening. So I must encourage people to get the shot because, in some other jurisdictions and countries, we're seeing a little bit of vaccine hesitancy. So, it's important. And I know the premiers are pleading, the prime minister's pleading, everyone's pleading, I'm pleading, you're pleading to, get Canadians to get the shot because, once we have 75% Canadians that have had at least one dose and 20% had a second shot, we're going to be able to do more out things, whether it's going hiking or, sharing a meal on a patio. So this is exciting news, but the third wave isn't over yet. So we really have to continue to follow local public health guidelines, and it's wearing the mask, it's the social distancing, it's active and the passive screening and just making sure that we double down on that. And on that, Michael, I have to mention that here in Sault Ste. Marie doing this Team Canada approach, we certainly have had a lot of success, and I wanted to thank everyone again for that. We've also distributed a lot of tests, right, to the provinces. That's really important, testing, and there is an opportunity. So through the Safe Restart Agreement, we've distributed tests to the provinces and the territories. But businesses and organizations also can apply directly, in particular if they're in the essential services, for testing, because testing is really important, including rapid testing, right? Where you can cut the transmission off, because we know that community transmission is how the virus is spreading. So when you test, you identify, you cut the transmission, the isolation happens, it stops it from spreading throughout the community. So we got to continue to, deliver tests. I think 11 million tests have been delivered to Ontario to date. We've also been using the Red Cross, staff to help with long-term care homes in Ontario, and as well we sent the Army in. We've also seen a number of contact tracers, federal contact tracers that are making thousands of calls, each day to identify and to stop that transmission. So the vaccines, we're certainly really have accelerated our efforts, and we continually to exceed our projections. And I'm pleased to report that to you today, Michael, about the millions of tests that have been distributed. The 23 million to provinces and territories, and the 20 million Canadians that have received one dose, and the fact that 40 million are coming, by the end of July, and that 100 million by September. Thank you.
Yeah, very, very exciting news. It seems we're really picking up a lot of momentum on this now, and we're not at the end of the tunnel, but there's definitely some light now. And on that rapid testing, I mean, that's something that the chamber is taking a leading role
Yes.
in acquiring a lot of these rapid tests and being able to provide them not only to our members but other business community or businesses in our community to again help stop that spread, because absolutely this is not it's not going to be a one-pronged solution here. Vaccinations are great, but that's not our only tool that we have to use. Okay, so shifting gears here. As a chamber representing our business community, we know the importance of investment in economic infrastructure. Yesterday, you and the province announced a financial commitment to Algoma University. what role do you see the education system playing in the recovery, and what will reconciliation mean to our economic recovery?
It's everything to me, and I think it's everything to this community. We're so lucky to have Algoma University, Sault College, and the new Anishinaabe Discovery Center, and the Chamber's been very, very supportive of education. You know, the outward migration of youth and attracting youth has been a top priority for myself and for the Chamber for a number of years, and we work around the clock on it, and we know that that's a major tool for us, you know, to keeping our young people here, and as well to attract young people. So yesterday's announcement with Mr. Ross Romano and the Minister of Infrastructure, Catherine McKenna, was just excellent. It was $18 million. We were 7.1, and the province was $5.9 million for this beautiful cultural center. And it's going to go hand in glove with a lot of the investments that I championed over the last 5 years, and many of you have been at the announcements to support them and supported, you know, our efforts in getting that. The strategic infrastructure fund during my first term 5 years ago, we saw, you know, the Anishinaabe Discovery Center, which is across the road from Algoma University, and that'll go hand in glove with yesterday's announcement. That is about a $13 million investment, sole federal investment. It is just a magnificent site. You know, you think about what Algoma University looked like not too long ago and what it looks like now. And, you know, that is a lot of what they have done in driving it. And it's good for truth and reconciliation. I always tell the story about being there a number of years ago, and then Chief Justice Murray Sinclair was there to talk about all the recommendations. And one of the students raised their hand and asked a question. There was a question and answer period, and asked, well, where do we start? And he thought hard on that, and he paused and he looked at that student, he looked at all of us, and he said, education. That's where we need to start. And of course, now we know that it's now Senator Sinclair, and he's really helped along with that. So the work that they're doing there is amazing. It's attracting a lot of attention. And just a month or two ago, I announced $2 million for their computer information technology programming, computer science. And that is cutting edge. And they're training a lot of, you know, workers and entrepreneurs for the economy of now and in the future. And so that is really exciting. We also funded $2.5 million to renovate the Shinwalk Hall, and then some money for their archives and for their museum, the Shinwalk Museum there. It tells a great story, a tragic story too, and it's an important story to tell and to share and to talk about. And, you know, it's something that could never ever happen again, and we need to learn from it and heal. And it was very moving yesterday listening to the survivors, the children of the survivors, and the children's, you know, and the investments we're making in this infrastructure, as we call it, is what it's going to do is not only create jobs, which it will, you know, in construction, it will attract students, and all the you know, universities and Sault College have done economic impacts, and you know, you can see how huge of an impact they are. But it's also going to help us heal and move forward, and you know, truly, you know, move Sault Ste. Marie into the forefront of being a leader when it comes to truth and reconciliation. And we are on the traditional territory of Indigenous people. They've been here for thousands of years before we were here, and we have a lot to learn. But I'd be remiss with also not talking about Sault College as well. We've made a number of investments in Sault College in a variety of their IT programming, in around aviation. And I see the other Terry here. And, you know, we just had that announcement of $9 million for infrastructure at the airport. And we also, you know, we're very pleased to see that the tower was saved. And that was critical for Sault College as well, for their aviation program. I use as an example. So, you know, Sault College has been, you know, a receipt of millions of dollars in SIF funding too. And you're seeing their growth as well. So that will go hand in glove with some of the announcements in the 2021 budget as well. you know, for young people and for businesses that hire apprentices in Red Seal trades, there's some money on the table. And I was pleased to see that, as you know, my background in apprenticeship. So $5,000 for a business that takes on an apprentice in their first year is really important to facilitate the training, you know, in the first year. That number will increase to $10,000 if, you know, if it's identified as a non-traditional worker, you know, or whatever term you want to use. It could be up to $10,000. It could be someone, could be Indigenous, a woman in trades, someone that's has a disability. That number is increased, so that's important. And Michael, on that note, you know, and I always share something new that's not just the vaccine numbers that came across my desk, but something specific to Sault Ste. Marie. And I know the Chamber was a huge advocate of this, and many of the Chamber members here are in receipt of this program. It's called the Canada Student Jobs. We used to call it the Canada Summer Jobs. I started calling it the Canada Student Jobs Program because during COVID-19, we have lengthened the time in which a student can work for a business. And you know full well, we opened it up just from the public sector, where it serves a very important purpose, but to the private sector as well, made them eligible. So I'm pleased to tell you, and I know that a lot of people on this call will probably be interested in this, that we had 580 Canada students jobs approved. That's 580 jobs for our young people. A lot of those young people that, you know, are working, might be going to Sault College, they don't have to, might be going to Sault College, might be going to Algoma University, can work at these businesses, and private sector is eligible at a 75% rate, or 75 cents on the dollar. So 580 jobs. So we're investing well over $2 million in local businesses, both in the private and public sector, charities, you know, First Nations, cities, because Sault Ste. Marie, the riding is large, right? Prince Township, I'm proud to represent, and the Sioux, Batchewana, Garden River, up to Gooley, I go just past Montreal River. And those students are all eligible. And it's just not for someone who's going back to school. It could be somebody who is not going to school, but it's the age category. So whether they're going back to school here in the Sioux or somewhere else, yep, they're eligible. If they're just a young person, they're eligible. But that's an amazing amount of people. And I want to thank all of you that are taking on these students. And we're doing it in a very safe manner, very, very safely done. Some are doing it virtually, some are doing it through extensive training. And you know, I want to thank all of you for providing safe places for these young people to work. And all studies show, and I've said it again and again, if students can't get a job, in particular in the summer, in between their studies, if they take jobs in communities where they are studying, they start to plant their roots in those communities outside. So giving young people opportunities to be home in a pandemic or a non-pandemic year, as this program will continue to go throughout, is absolutely critical for youth retention and attraction. So yes, and there's more to be done. And you know, we've got a good start. I know that both the college and the university have even more ambitious plans. And you know, as they grow, we too will grow. And so I'm very pleased with that. And again, thank you ever so much for your support, and thank you to your chamber members for taking on these students and providing them with meaning employment and training, because I know that opening up to the private sector also gives some young people opportunities that they get exposed to the private sector, entrepreneurship, and running a business. So thanks to all of you for taking on these students, and so pleased with this record-breaking announcement that I'm sharing with you today.
Yeah, very exciting news. Lots of great announcements. It's nice to get some positive momentum going forward. And you can see by the chat box, obviously a lot of positivity in this room today. So fantastic, and let's keep it going. Okay, let's move on to something that had an announcement the other day, and there's a bit of confusion on. So, being a border community, obviously, we're very sensitive to restrictions on our land borders. The government had suggested that the border is open to citizens who wish to get vaccinated, but there appears to be some confusion whether this is so and how it works. Could you maybe give us some clarification on that?
Well, this is being worked on as always. The border is being a border town is always a top priority and on the top of everyone's mind. And so since March 2020, you know that we have restricted travelers, non-essential travelers into Canada, and other countries have, and so has the United States. So we have agreements with them, and the border is been, its current condition is still in place until, it was just announced yesterday, June 21st. So that's happening. And first of all, I got to give a shout out to our Canadian border guards and people working at the bridge too as well, because they're doing a great job, keeping us safe. And making sure that, as I always said, I'm on the trade committee too, as you guys know. We have $2 billion of trade that goes across our border between Canada and the United States every day. And, we got to keep those, PPE supplies going, tests, vaccines, food, keeping our industries, equipped with the resources that they can do to create those jobs. So that is being worked on right now, because after that was said, the American border officials had said that, no, that's not necessarily true, that you can just say if you're not an essential worker, because an essential worker, whether they're Canadian or American, who is deemed by both the Ontario government, because there's a provincial and territorial, jurisdictional, what's essential in each province, and the federal government, that are crossing, like say a truck driver, I'll use a Canadian truck driver that goes over there and is already there. We've heard that they're getting vaccines, have gotten American, vaccines and whatnot. But what the news is reporting, and what I know officials are working on both sides, is that the United States said, no, just specifically going over for a vaccine is not allowed. So that's where we're at right now. So it's still in motion. It's still being worked on, is the best way I can say. But regardless of anybody that goes over, they still, when Canadians come back, they're still subject to quarantine rules, and quarantining is really, really important. When people return. So we've implemented a number of additional members since March 2020. Including those tests. And we just talked about the tests, how important they are. So someone needs to get a test before entering Canada and gets clearance. And then depending how they arrive, say by the land border here, they would have to go into their quarantine for 14 days. There's follow-up. They're given a test too as well. And that's where, the continued follow-up happens. So that's the best way I can answer that. And I can just tell you that, going to vaccines, I saw an interesting statistic yesterday that Canada and the United States are now equal as a percentage of their citizens receiving the first dose. So we're certainly seeing that, and I encourage as I've encouraged Canadians, I encourage Americans and everyone in the world to continue to get vaccinated because this is a global pandemic, and we need everyone to get vaccines so that we can get back to normal.
Yeah, absolutely. No, thank you for some clarification. Now, I guess on that topic, we'll keep going down that path. So, in Northern Ontario, we're heading into the tourist season, and the border plays a major role in fueling our local economy. Will we see the border open to those who have received vaccines? How could this be managed if it remains closed? What will the federal government do to support this sector and related business if that border continues to remain closed?
Yeah, and that's one of the, we know full well that, the transmission of COVID-19 within Canada, within Ontario, it's driven by community spread. it's 1% of COVID-19 transmission is related to international travel. So, it's the vast majority is community spread, outbreaks in workplaces, schools. I think the workplace outbreaks was about 37% was the data I'd seen. Schools was getting up to 25%. So 60 to 65% is just in that effort. So we continue to adhere to those, models. So when it comes to the border, we've done a good job. When I take a look at it, and everybody here in Sault Ste. Marie is well aware of it, that there were more cases of COVID-19 within a day's drive of Sault Ste. Marie in the United States than there was in all of Canada. So again, our border measures are in place. They're strong. We are catching them through our pre-screening, screening, our testing, our quarantining, our mandatory, if you're flying in, stays at a hotel, and the continual follow-up. So that's important. And we know it's working because I wear my other hat as the parliamentary secretary to FedNor, and we know how much this has affected the tourism industry in Northern Ontario. So that's why, we identified and created a lot of the programmings. And for you people working in the banking industry, I want to give you guys a shout out for delivering the CEBA, the Canada Emergency Bank Account. I have statistics on that. We have put in, and I got to give that one to you. So once I see that, we had a number of them in the thousands that have been delivered for the different businesses. But for whatever reason, why someone organized themselves or market conditions or whatever, some people weren't eligible, say, for the CEBA and the Canada Emergency Bank Account. So that's where they were falling through the cracks. And so we we heard this through chamber conversations here locally in the Sioux, across Northern Ontario, Canada. My Minister for Economic Development, Minister Jolie, who was recently here to announce the foreign trade zones, we continually communicate with people. And, over the last little while, I've personally hundreds and hundreds of stakeholders and stakeholder groups before the budget. And what we heard, Michael, continually was that our programs were absolutely necessary, including the wage subsidy for tourism and all these other businesses. And, a lot of people ask, why was it 10% when it was first rolled out? Well, it was one of the tools that was already in the toolbox. It was an existing program. So back in March 2020, we rolled that out, but we heard that we needed to do more. So that's why we moved it up to 75%. And Michael, you know full well that, as the border remains closed, and our American cousins and friends aren't coming across the border, that our tourism industry was hurting. And through consultations with Kevin here and a whole bunch of folks in the tourism industry, we were proud to announce that we're extending the wage subsidy from ending, which would have ended in June, to the end of September. So, that's really, really critical because, the vaccines are coming out and we're not, you see the light at the end of the tunnel, like you said, but our program needs to be there. So the CEBA has been extended, the wage subsidy, the rent subsidy. So what I'm saying too as well, me being the parliamentary secretary for FedNor, we created a program to try and fill those cracks. And it was called the Regional Relief and Recovery Fund. And it mirrors the Canada Emergency Bank Account. And it's delivered through the community development corporations or community future development corporations across Northern Ontario. And here in Sault Ste. Marie, they're doing a great job. My information will be about a little bit, dated, but the information I had recently was that they have done $1.3 million in similar loans, which was the $40,000 CEBA, which was increased to the $60,000 with some forgivability in it. And that's amazing. That is helping so many businesses. It's really, really and astronomically helping them on various areas in this community. So thank you very much. That program is so important to small businesses that were falling through the cracks, that for whatever reason they weren't eligible for wage sub, and that's how you start. You're not eligible for the wage subsidy, you're not eligible for CEBA. well, there's a potential for the RRF to backstop that. So we started out with that program. We announced $1 billion, in Northern Ontario. We got our fair share. Then we announced another 500 million because the pandemic was still going, the borders were still closed, and pleased to see that we have, moved it to $2 billion to support businesses. But specifically on tourism, sitting with the minister and the other parliamentary secretaries, we devised a plan, and we knew that we needed very, very much more support and specific support for the tourism industry. That's why in budget 2021, we put $1 billion specifically in for the tourism business, tourism businesses and for communities and whatnot. It includes monies for festivals and events, 400 million, 200 million for smaller ones, 200 million for larger ones. And I know I see Donna Hilsinger there too as well, who's very much in charge of a lot of great festivals and stuff. So those supports are out there to support those festivals and events, because people can't gather, whether it's counting on Americans or locals for domestic tourism, if you will. And as well, we put specifically $500 million for a tourism support fund. You've seen the highly affected sectors program, where a lot of hotels are applying and are being successful with program. That's really, really important. We also put in place an additional amount of money for $100 million for marketing. And so we've been very nimble on that, because as the borders were closed, we started putting the focus, and Tourism Sault Ste. Marie got some money and some other people on doing what we call domestic tourism. And we found that promoting that, some businesses and tourism businesses did quite well, in particular in the northeast of Northern Ontario. And people were traveling within about 2.5 hours, doing staycations, mixing it in with outdoor activities and whatnot. And that will, and I think, still remain a focus until the border opens. And so we were going to market that. As the borders open, we'll be ready, and we'll be welcoming international visitors when the time is right, when health experts tell us, and we will market as well on that particular program. So yes, we have a lot of programs. We recognize how good our border restrictions have been, not only in just statistically looking at the Ontario data that Ontario provides, that only 1% of transmissions are accounted to international travel, but I just from the tourism industry, as you know, I worked in it. I worked in the restaurant business. I was a sales and marketing manager. I was at the Water Tower. I was a lodge manager at Searchmount, and many of my friends still work in that industry, and it is hard. It's very, very hard hit, and these are good middle class paying jobs. And so I'm going to continue to do everything to make sure that we have those supports in place and continue. And I'm so pleased how responsive our government has been. In fact, the Prime Minister wrote up, they have these letters that they give to the ministers. It's kind of your priorities. And these letters that the Prime Minister writes to every cabinet minister had tourism in it as a priority. So everyone needs to be thinking about it, whatever the ministry is, and how to support our hardworking tourism industry. And I want to thank everyone for who works in it and for providing your meaningful conversations that I share directly with my minister, who sits at the COVID-19 table. And I'm pleased that she's putting me on a lot of the associations and stakeholder engagement calls. And I can tell you that we heard loud and clear, and many of you actually here, some of you are from part of national associations and whatnot. I've met with you in your groups, and thank you for that feedback. So to answer, and people always say, well, the September deadline, will it be extended? I can say that, look, we've extended it a number of times, our programming, because we had to, we need to, and we haven't finished the fight on COVID-19. We can see the light at the end of the tunnel, but we've got to just hunker down and continue to support everyone. So that is a top priority for me.
Excellent. No, thank you. Appreciate the color on that subject, because I know it's near and dear to a lot of folks, not only on this call, but in our local community. So I'm going to switch topics here, and this was actually brought up in the chat box as well. In the fight against COVID and infectious disease, we may need to develop new technologies and modernize older technologies. What role can a proven technology like germicidal ultraviolet and other new discoveries play as a preventative measure? And how will the government support the development of made in Canada solutions?
Love that. I can tell you that the amount of innovation creation by our entrepreneurs here in Northern Ontario are just amazing. I can tell you it's just amazing. And everyone that is joining our fight, as we fight together as Team Canada, is so welcome. So, Canada's research community is some of the best and brightest talents in the world. And, we have labs, companies, and institutions across the country that are working diligently to identify and track COVID-19, develop therapies and vaccines, all these great things. And, these teams are organized and they have my full support. And this includes, investing in research, clinical trials, made in Canada technologies. Our government continues to work hard to develop these measures that protect the health and safety for Canadians. So, our government has partnered with a lot of industry, to fight for the health of the Canadians and economic well-being. And it's about working with them. And so I feel deeply honored that people feel very comfortable talking to me about what they're working on. So I won't delve into very specific kind of things. I don't know what I'm, what's private, what's not. But there's been a lot of developments, including, this one. I know locally there's an entrepreneur, and I know who they are, and is working on this. So what I do is I open doors and I point them in the direction. So a lot of that, process is working with Health Canada, procurement, regional development agencies, and getting that out. So we have some very interesting articles that were in a Toronto paper about a local entrepreneur about this too as well. So just keep it up. And, we are working with a lot of people. And on that note too as well, there's some others that are public too as well. A doctor is working on an app, Dr. Lucas, with a number of people. He's public on that, and it's really, really interesting. And it's an app that could be downloaded that has a great deal of functionality on it. We've seen local people producing masks, hand sanitizers, and a great deal of things. So welcome everyone to the table and to join our fight, and to continue to be there to encourage and to support. And I think of the announcement again. It's about vaccines, but this week we had the announcement of a vaccine manufacturing facility in Ontario that's going to create 500 jobs, but is also going to create vaccines for future usage, and that's really critical. So again, thanks to everyone's efforts for joining our fight.
Excellent, thank you very much. I know we've got a 9:30 hard stop, and we're approaching that, so I'll just keep that in mind. So next is a question I think is probably a bit on everyone's mind. So there've been a lot of statements recently from the Prime Minister included, talking about elected leaders playing politics at a very dangerous time. Obviously, the nation is fatigued by the pandemic, and it seems like in some people's view, the last thing we need right now is an election. What is happening with this discussion in Ottawa?
Well, I joined that person, whoever asked that question. We need to keep putting people first in politics. Leave that to other people. So since the beginning of COVID-19, our party has been and remains, keeping Canadians safe. We have no interest in an election while this danger persists. But in a minority parliament, as we all know, an election could happen at any time if the government were to fall. And the fact is, opposition parties have voted against the government on matters of confidence, which caused an election 14 times during this session of Parliament. So, don't want it at all. But it's something that, if it ever did happen, and we've seen elections happen during the pandemic, it would have to be, if it was triggered by the opposition, it would have, we'd have to make sure that everything is safe and our democratic process will roll out safely. So the answer to that is, we need to keep putting people first. We just had, the budget 2021, introduced and passed, but there's different pieces of enabling legislation that need to be passed too as well. And here's where it becomes, and I'm just being very honest about it, is that, I call on the opposition parties to work with us, because what happens in a minority government, and it's happened in the past to minority governments, where parties can do filibustering. So for instance, the fall economic statement, we identified $500 million more for the Regional Relief and Recovery Fund. But unfortunately, one of the political parties, this time it was the Conservatives, I'm just saying, had put filibustering processes in place. The fall economic statement, the money, including tens of millions of dollars for tourism businesses and other businesses in Northern Ontario, were stonewalled. And we called them out, and I made personal pleas. I reached across the aisle. I talked to conservative friends of mine, and I said, listen, please, we need to move forward on this. This is not appropriate. And we finally got it passed just a couple of weeks ago, and it just received royal assent. So the good news is that we're going to have, more money for the CDC, the Community Development Corporation now, that, I just talked about all the great work they were doing. So that's coming, but, we've got to keep putting people first. We're not done this fight. We have a third wave happening right now. So we need to focus over the next 5 weeks on getting the supports that our healthcare needs, that our businesses need, that our people need, that our communities need, out the door. It's an ambitious budget, and it has a lot of important items in it. It has, and I think of what I've heard of, a lot was about the daycare and early learning. Parents have said this is absolutely critical. And the return on investment on this program is amazing. You take a look at the modeling that was done by some economists, by one of the banks in Quebec, on the return on investment was 3 times, because it enables, in particular, women to get back into the workforce quicker, to continue to further their career, providing quality daycare that's affordable. It allows people to start businesses or reactivate their businesses quicker than usual. So that's just one of the priorities, or is it the $3 billion for long-term care, and the national standards that are there in that budget needs to be passed. And of course, the $1 billion for the tourism industry that I just talked about. So again, I call on all parties to join us to continue to finish this fight and play politics later. Let's put people first.
All right, thank you very much. Another question here. Okay. How is the trade relationship going with the Biden administration, and what will be the future, what are the future trade barriers, and where will climate policy impact that relationship, with other countries as well? Just as an example, China is continuing to build coal-fired plants and accounting for a huge amount of the greenhouse gases in the world, while the rest of the world is trying to go the other way and act a little more responsibly as global citizens.
What an excellent question. It's going good. And recently I sponsored a study, a work study, which looked at, because I'm on the trade committee, which called for the work to be done on how we can export more green, clean tech, because Canada is a leader in that, in particular Sault Ste. Marie. I was the seconder on the resolution calling Sault Ste. Marie the alternative energy capital of North America. And we have a lot of great green tech, clean tech businesses happening here. And we need to continue to focus on supporting them. we have seen a huge amount of movement in EV, electric vehicles, and batteries. And we've heard great testimony on there. I had the privilege of making announcements in cobalt for a company that's processing and mining sulfate and for electric vehicle batteries. There's huge interest from around the world in what Canada is doing on that. So that feeds into the supply chain. So you've seen some of the great announcements that Ontario and Canada has done in around the auto industry. And we know full well that, you know, the auto industry, when it grows, it helps places like the Sioux and other places that manufacture things that go into to those vehicles. Well, there's a change too as well. They're starting to do electric vehicles. So you're starting to see supply chains really starting to get populated. So we made a contribution of $5 million. It's an interest-free loan, but right away that leveraged a $21 million investment. Very important, you know, and that is very, very important. And that supply chain is going across the border back and forth. And speaking of supply chain, we continue to support our steel industry. Recently, we made an announcement, a further announcement at Tenaris Tubes of $5 million from FedNor. And that is going in hand in glove with a $16 million announcement we did a couple of years ago. The province has announced $9 million to Tenaris, and that's going to create about 125 great middle-class jobs, and as well as support, you know, the important industry that they're working in. We also have Algoma Steel, who received a $4 million contribution from ECC, from Environment Canada, to you know, basically work and make the coke oven better, so there'll be less emissions. It's like taking tens upon tens of thousands of cars off the road, and it's good for you know, Algoma Steel's bottom line. It's good for the workers there. It's good for the environment, and you know, that $4 million investment is going hand in glove with the $90 million investment. And those investments, and the reason why I bring those up is they're still in play, and they're still working on. They're creating jobs, they're maintaining jobs, they're strengthening our steel industry. The 232 tariffs, you know, we fought real hard to keep them off, and we're going to keep them off. You know, there are other things that we are working on. There is currently, and that's part of my study that I had sponsored, where it was tariffs on solar panels. And you know, my minister that I work with, Mary Ng, is engaged on it. I have brought it up with both Ottawa and Washington, and we're going to continue that fight. Here locally, we've supported Helene, I believe, with 4 different investments from FedNor to continue their great work, and so we're going to continue to do that. You know, lumber continues. I just met with the Forestry Association of Canada. Lumber is very important to Sault Ste. Marie in Northern Ontario and that industry, and we continue to work with them. The demand side on lumber is huge, you know, and like we say, these are taxes on Americans because they, you know, are still, you know, in a building, they're still building a significant amount. So we're working to get rid of that because managed trade is not, I believe, in free enterprise, free trade. So we'll continue to work on those. And, you know, and the forest industry has also played a very important role in PPE and supplies. So I want to thank them for that. And yes, we're moving towards getting rid of reliance on coal, and we're looking at plans on how we can do that. It's very, very important to look at alternative sources of energy. And, you know, we had the smart grid announcement here. We're talking about energy, $11.8 million investment that's just going to modernize the grid and make it more reliable, less power outages. It'll reduce the cost of electricity, and it'll be better for the environment. And that will go hand in glove, I think, with a lot of our announcements around green clean tech, because there's a lot of funding sources for businesses that are going out there. We just had an announcement, which was really interesting, and I thought that Sault Ste. Marie had been in a good position, and you know, bring it to people's attention, was the 2,000 jobs. You know, as you know, we are going to train people that can do the necessary analysis as it relates to energy and such, which will create jobs, but it's also going to help people and businesses understand where and how they can make some changes. And then within our budget, we also have some funding for home renovations as it relates to green clean tech, as well as some other things. So it is extremely exciting times. We're in a super position to capitalize on it. Our foreign trade zone is a game changer. We're the only one in Northern Ontario, and thank you, Chamber, for participating in that. And the minister was here, and there'll be a committee that's set up. I'm hoping that some of these members here will be on that committee. It'll be driven by the city, and it's kind of a one-stop shop. And we heard it again and again and again when people from the Chamber met with the Deputy Prime Minister about our great position. And that is also, if we're going to talk about trade, is to continue to invest in our infrastructure, including the multimodal efforts. We just had that $9 million at the airport, but work continues on rail and on the port and on the highways. So we have to have tip-top infrastructure as it relates to transporting our goods. But our geographical position, where we are, is a great advantage. What we're doing in alternative energy, what we're doing in traditional manufacturing, and having this foreign trade zone, we are in a good position. I've seen statistics where Sault Ste. Marie is doing a lot better than the province as it relates to its numbers related to unemployment and whatnot. I think a lot of that has to do with the supports, the wage subsidy. When the wage subsidy came out, many businesses weren't eligible, but I went to bat and made sure that if a business needs it, they ought to get it, and that's why we expanded it, and there's 5.3 million Canadians that have benefited and are continuing to work because of it. And again, the fallback, if people aren't eligible, the Regional Relief and Recovery Fund is great, and to contact FedNor as well. So I can tell you, I think I just talked myself to 9:30. It's a really important subject to me. That study that we undertook just finished. We are reviewing it. We'll be making recommendations as it relates to green clean tech. And I look forward to that work. So stay tuned for that study, which I will share with the Chamber of Commerce. And I wanted to thank everyone here today for just being absolutely fantastic partners. And we are coming roaring back. We're building back better. And we're not finished the fight, but I got a lot of fight left in me.
That's great to hear. Definitely lots of good news on the horizon, lots of positive momentum, and definitely appreciate you sharing a lot of that with us today. It is 9:30. I know a lot of folks are jumping on the next call, the Algoma Vaccination Support Council call. So we should probably start wrapping this up. Terry, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Trish, I'll pass it back to you to close off.
Thanks, Mike. So again, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us this morning. We are so thankful that your engagement benefits all of our local businesses and community as a whole. We thank you for always joining in the conversation. If you're not a member, please consider joining. We are the most trusted organization to represent your business, to keep you informed, to connect you with our elected leaders, government officials, business leaders, and most of all, connect you with each other. Which is, of course, a little different as we go forward through this pandemic. To MP Terry Sheehan, thank you again for taking part in today's discussion. With the changes and challenges today that businesses are facing, discussions like this are so important to our membership and provide them with an opportunity to gain insight into the decision-making process and the considerations taken when making these decisions. I also just want to put a note to the chat box. We will be hosting some events coming up in June 3rd and June 1st. So please have a look at those as you're continuing to review that. You can also visit our Chamber website for those events. And lastly, the Sault Ste. Marie Chamber of Commerce is also in the process of finalizing its rapid testing kit distribution program for small businesses. Stay tuned as we will have more news on this exciting program. Finally, the Government of Canada has recently announced expanding access to COVID-19 vaccinations, and the province of Ontario and Algoma Public Health have announced plans to significantly expand the vaccination availability. This means that local and regional vaccination efforts will begin to expand. The Chamber and Strive's Algoma Vaccination Support Council is very proud to support the local efforts to get our citizens vaccinated. Thank you for the donations from our local businesses and members of the Algoma Vaccination Support Council. We have been able to provide complimentary lunches, snacks, coffee, water to all the workers and volunteers of our GFL vaccination hub, as well as clinics at our neighbor First Nation and communities around Algoma. With the help of PUC services, we have launched a Need a Ride program for individuals needing transportation to and from the vaccination appointments. And we have also launched our AVSC landing page, which provides educational materials and links to resources around getting vaccinated. With the vaccination effort expanding locally, we need your support. If you're able to sponsor the efforts of the Algoma Vaccination Clinic, contact Rory Ring, Chamber of Commerce CEO, or visit the website at our Sault Ste. Marie Chamber of Commerce, where you'll find the donate button. We are all in this together. This concludes our fireside chat. And once again, thank you to everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day and have a safe and wonderful long weekend. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Take care, everybody.